afternoon, ladies. I hope we are all doing very well at home amidst this COVID-19, and I hope that we are taking very good care of ourselves. Special greetings from all other members of the education department to you all. I would like to welcome you to the second semester of this academic year, and especially to the course General Principles and Methods of Teaching in Basic Schools. This course will be facilitated by myself, Ms. Monico, and Mr. Moses Azerewa Azereni. To be effective, not only should the teacher know the content or the subject matter, but more importantly, how to teach it. The Ghanaian school teacher operates as a general teacher, teaching various subjects. She needs to be exposed to the general principles and methods of teaching that will make them effective in the classroom. The General Methods course intends to convey what is known about pedagogy, the art and science of teaching that is of interest to the basic school teacher. I've already said that the course title is General Principles and Methods of Teaching in Basic Schools. The course code is EBS262. It is a level 200 course, which is usually taught in the second semester. The course delivery modes include face-to-face, practical activity, work-based learning, seminars, independent study, e-learning opportunities just as we are doing, and practicum. The course, we believe, will equip students with skills for effective teaching. I said effective teaching and not ordinary teaching. The course introduces students to a number of methods and activities that will sustain pupils' attention and interest in the teaching and learning interaction. Students will be equipped to teach with different types of objectives, interactive techniques such as demonstrations, discussions, debates, observations, etc., as well as assessment procedures, which include presentations, projects, reports writing. All these would be employed in the learning process. We also want to develop in you critical thinking skills and commitments to teaching, and for you to become reflective practitioners in the classroom to ensure your self-professional development. This course also covers age-specific issues, such as similarities and differences between methods of teaching primary school children and junior high school students. The approaches that will be used in the delivery of this course would prepare trainees to ensure the learning progress of all students by projecting gender roles and issues relating to equity and inclusivity. All these are in line with the NTEF, page 69, and the National Teacher Standards 1B, 3K, 3P, and the rest. Now we have various course learning outcomes. We expect that on successful completion of the course, student teachers will be able to 1. Demonstrate thorough understanding of various teaching methods and develop the skills and competencies for effectively employing them in the classroom. We expect that you will be able to distinguish between teaching methods and teaching strategies employed in the classroom, and to present a lesson using the appropriate teaching method. 2. To demonstrate clear understanding of the components of a lesson plan and develop the skill of preparing very good and comprehensive lesson plans. We expect that you'll be able to mention the various components of a lesson, state measurable and achievable objectives, explain what goes into the various components of a lesson plan. 3. To demonstrate the ability to use different teaching methods and skills to enrich lesson delivery. We expect that you'll be able to explain some types of teaching methods and how they can be employed in the classroom. State some factors that influence the choice of teaching methods. Prepare a lesson plan and teach with it. Demonstrate effective ways of managing the classroom to facilitate effective teaching and learning. Explain what classroom management entails. To describe how discipline can be maintained in the classroom. Now the various course contents. Unit 1 will take a look at the principles of teaching and instruction. The various subtopics have been outlined there. So we have defining teaching and instruction, factors to consider in planning instruction, lesson steps, writing a lesson, etc. Then Unit 2 would look at pupil-centered methods of teaching. So in Unit 2, we'll be looking at activity method of teaching and the discovery learning process. We'll be looking at brainstorming, the use of discussion, individualized methods, projects, problem solving, and the rest. Unit 3 takes a look at teacher-centered methods of teaching. There will be looking at questioning and the use of dialogue, types, skills, and appropriate ways of questioning. Then we would look at methods and strategies of teaching. So the expository teaching process will touch on that. The use of lectures and drill, case studies, teacher-led discussions, the use of the chalkboard and instructional materials, stimulus variation techniques used in the classroom, etc. The final unit will look at classroom management techniques. There will be talking about importance of classroom management, importance and types of learner motivation, organizing routine activities, and how to properly seat pupils in the classroom, managing instructional time, order and discipline in the classroom, and how to handle disruptive pupils. Course assessment components. Component 1, there will be formative assessment, which is individual and group presentations, summary of assessment method. That would include group presentations on the meaning and types of methods of teaching. Core skills to be developed there is reflective thinking, collaboration, and communicative skills, as well as personal development. The weighting is 30%. Component 2, which would also be formative assessments, that would include the various quizzes we usually do. Summary of assessment method would have quizzes on NTS, the skills teachers need to function effectively in the classroom, and the rest. So these are what we will be looking at as far as the course is concerned for this particular semester. We will quickly shift attention to the very first lesson of this course. Just as I said, Unit 1 looks at the principles of teaching and instruction. We'll start by defining teaching, and then we'll look at instruction as well, and then look at the differences between these two concepts. Teaching has been defined in different ways by different educators. Now, these definitions range from being traditional, that is, the teacher seen as the supplier of knowledge, skills, and experiences, to a more modern definition that sees the teacher as the facilitator of students' teaching, of students' learning. Teaching has been defined by a lot of people. Some of these authors include Kumsen, 2010, Kumsen says that teaching is an activity performed by a more experienced and knowledgeable person with a view to helping the less experienced and knowledgeable person to learn. Nacino Brown and others, 1982, defined teaching as an attempt to help someone acquire or change some skills, attitude, knowledge, ideas, and principles. Smith and Regan, 1999, have defined teaching as those learning experiences that are facilitated by a human being, not video, TV, textbook, or computer-based program, but to them, there should be a real life teacher. J.S. Farrant, 1980, has defined teaching as a process that facilitates learning through knowledge and skills acquired by a learner from an experienced person. John Dewey says that teaching simply means helping someone to acquire knowledge and skills that brings about changes in behavior. Moore has defined teaching as the actions of someone who is trying to assist others to reach their fullest potential in all aspects of development. Morrison sees teaching as an intimate contact between a more mature personality and a less mature one, which is designed to further the education of the later. Let's look at some common things about the definitions above. In all the definitions, the teacher can be identified, that is the person directing the activities. That means in teaching, there should always be someone directing the activities. 2, a learner can also be identified. Who is the learner? The person receiving the directions and reacting to the activities. 3, intentions or purpose of the activities can be identified. That is the outcomes, learning, or behavioral change we expect. Teaching usually involves face-to-face relationship between a teacher and a learner. According to Microsoft 2006, teaching is a systematic presentation of facts, ideas, skills, and techniques to students. Another definition by a senior lecturer at the University of Cape Coast, Mr. Palmer Sanyagre and others, 2003, have defined teaching as the random or structured information that leads to learning. So according to this group, teaching can be randomly done, it can be structured as well. Why do we teach? What is the purpose of teaching? The main purpose of teaching is to help others to learn. This can be put in another way. Teaching is correlated with learning. And according to Farrant, 1980, teaching and learning are opposite sides of the same coin. They are twin words which have been paired together for years. It has an intentional objective. And what is this objective? I believe when a teacher sets out to teach, his or her intention is to bring about learning. And that is what is called success objective. That is the main purpose of teaching. What are some teaching activities that goes on in the classroom? In the classroom, we talk and we chalk. What do I mean by chalking? Writing. And so we don't only talk in class, we talk and write. We explain concepts, we teach, and then we write certain things on the board for our students. Again, in the classroom, we engage in lots and lots of non-verbal cues. Our facial expressions, our gestures, our posture, everything symbolic about us in the classroom is a teaching activity. We also use verbal directions. We give verbal directions in class as well. We explain concepts, we question, we mark pupils' work. We arrange learning materials in the classroom. And then we organize pupils in smaller groups. The question that most people ask is whether teaching is an art or a science. This has led to the question whether teachers are born or made. I don't know whether you have come across somebody who teaches naturally as if the person was born to just teach. The person teaches and you feel that he knows what he or she is doing. Teaching becomes an art when it is done naturally, when you have the natural flair to teach. It becomes an art when it requires your own intuition as a teacher, your talent, your creativity, and your ability to pull the crowd. The art of teaching was demonstrated first by some ancient philosophers, writers, and some religious personalities, such as Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, Jesus Christ, Muhammad, and others. Why do we say these people were teachers? Jesus Christ never attended a training college or a college of education in Ghana or elsewhere, but he had the natural skill of teaching. Some teachers in primary and secondary schools display good teaching skills and start even before training. Teaching becomes a science when it consists of knowledge, skills, and scientific principles or scientific basis which can be learned. Teaching becomes science when we apply systematically tested theories and approaches to teaching. Teachers could not begin to practice teaching without having some sound knowledge of the context of their practice and some ideas about what can and should be done in those circumstances. Teachers have to go through intensive training to acquire the necessary skills needed for teaching before they can teach. And that makes teaching a science. We expect that for every good teacher, you should see teaching as an art and you should see teaching as a science. So the two goes hand in hand. You can have the natural flair. You can teach naturally as if you are a born teacher. But together you need to have training in the methodology and the skills of teaching. That makes you a professional teacher. We now look at the meaning of instruction. Instruction is the structured, ordered, or organized information that learners receive in a designed program. Now, the information through instruction is always structured and organized in the form that ranges from simple to complex, basic to advanced, and concrete to abstract. Lefrancois, 1988, has explained instruction as arrangement of outside events in a learning situation, which is aimed at enhancing learning, retention, and transfer. Its strategy is a systematic behavior engaged by teachers in the teaching and learning process. The main parts of instruction are planning, implementation, and evaluation. Now, since the information pupils receive in the classroom is always structured, the interaction between the teacher and the pupil is termed instructional rather than teaching. So if classroom teaching is structured, it is ordered, it is well arranged, it is termed as instruction and no more teaching. Now the three parts of instruction, just as I have said, are planning, implementation, and evaluation. Another definition says that instruction is the creation and the use of environments in which learning is facilitated. Driscoll 1994 states that instruction is the deliberate arrangement of learning conditions to promote the attainment of some intended goal. In the definitions above, we see that instruction is a systematic arrangement of experiences leading to learners acquiring particular knowledge, and it includes learning experiences in which the instructional support is carried out by teaching or by other forms of mediation. Principles of instruction. In everything we do on earth, it needs to be guided by certain rules or certain guidelines. And so some of the guidelines governing instruction says that the teacher should create a facilitative environment or a helping environment. That is your duty as a teacher. You need to create a friendly learning atmosphere, a facilitative or a helping relationship with your students, making them want to learn with or without your presence. The learner should then use the facilitative environment created to learn. And so it is not only the teacher who has something to do as far as instruction is concerned, but the learner as well. When the teacher creates this facilitative environment, the learner is expected to make good use of this facilitative environment created to learn. Instruction can be strictly directed by the teacher, or it can be much more open-ended. What we have realized is that most instruction falls in between these two. So the principles, the teacher should create a facilitative environment. The learner should make good use of this facilitative environment, and instruction should be between strictly directed by the teacher and being more open-ended. What are some characteristics of instruction? The very first one is that every experience is focused towards one or more goals for learning. And so we can't just get up and decide to teach in the classroom or to give instructions in the classroom. There should be the reason why we want to do that. There should be the reason for teaching, the reason for giving instructions in the classroom. I don't think it is out of fun you decide to dress up in the morning, go to class and teach. But at the end of the day, you expect your students to achieve something. You have a goal, you have a target you want to achieve. Now, the arrangement of the learning experiences is intentional and deliberate. We intentionally decide to teach what we teach in the classroom. What are the phases of the process of instruction? The very first thing you do is to present information to learners as far as instruction is concerned. When you are done with the presentation of information, you need to guide your learners to first interact with the instructional materials as well as the information you have given them. Then, you allow learners to practice the material or the information to enhance their fluency and retention. That means you don't have to do everything for your pupils in class. Yours is to be a facilitator, and your work is to present information, guide them to first interact with the information or the materials, and then allow them to practice and practice and practice, so they become fluent in it, and that information can be retained by your learners. Again, you need to assess learners to determine how well they have learned the material and what they should do next. Let's now look at factors to consider when planning instruction. There are a number of things you need to look at or you need to consider whenever you want to plan for an instruction. The very first one is the entering behavior, or what we call learner characteristics of your students or your learners. What do we mean by entering behavior? These are characteristics that pupils bring into the instructional event. They include intellectual abilities, they include level of development, instructional objective, the syllabus, instructional procedure, performance assessment, materials available for instruction, motivational level of your students, the learning environment itself, and then special need cases in the classroom. We will look at them one after the other. First, I said entering behavior. And under entering behavior, I have talked about the intellectual ability of your learner. You would agree with me that learner's ability is not the same. You can decide on what the general performance of your class would be. If your pupils are bright, you need to put in more challenging activities. If they are generally not so bright, then you should not frustrate them by using very challenging activities. We have different ability students in the classroom. Some are higher achievers, some are average, and some are low. And so when you are planning for instruction, you need to consider all these three groups. That will give you the general idea of the students or the pupils you are handling in your class and their ability level, for you to know the kind of activities you need to include in that particular instruction. The second one is the age of the pupils. For basic 2 pupils studying a topic, for example, the activity could be more of the playtime. However, if you have JHS students or basic 8 pupils, they may not enjoy activities that have to do with lots and lots of play. This means that the type of activity that you employ should depend on the level of development of the learner. The second one, apart from the entering behavior we've looked at, is instructional objective. What is an objective? It is simply a statement of skills, concepts, or attitudes that pupils are expected to gain at the end of a given period of instruction. We say that it is a statement of knowledge or task that pupils should master after 1 or more lessons. These are usually expectations teachers have by the end of a lesson, what they expect students to be able to do by the end of a particular instruction. You need to have an objective. Getting an objective helps you to know how to deliver your lessons in class, the type of materials you need to use, the kind of assessment you should even conduct in class. Because at the end of the day, your assessment will depend on your objective. If you assess your students, you realize that it is in line with the objectives you set for yourself. So if at the end of the day students are performing well, then it means some way, somehow, you are achieving your objectives. The third thing you need to consider in planning instruction is the syllabus. Every country or every nation has their own curriculum. And for that matter, their syllabus for each subject area. As a good teacher, we expect that you should teach within the requirements of this given syllabus. You don't just get up and start teaching anything at all you feel like teaching, which does not conform to the standards in the curriculum or in the syllabus. Topics have already been arranged in the syllabus for us as teachers. All you need to do is to go by these topics. All you need to do is to select appropriate methods to handle these topics. You can never plan instruction without having the curriculum or the syllabus beside you. Yes, you may have other books you are referring from, but the primary, most important document you need to have as a teacher when planning instruction is the syllabus. The syllabus is usually drawn with the national and regional objectives for education in mind, just as I said. The next factor is instructional procedure. This is simply the way in which a particular learning task is taught. Decisions made in respect of these instructional procedures are made up of 1. The medium of instruction to be used, instructional method to be used, and the organization of the classroom environment. So the teacher must make this decision during planning. You need to find out whether you are going to use e-learning just as I am doing. You are going to use the face-to-face. You are going to use any other form to teach your class. Another factor you need to consider is assessment, performance assessment. This has to do with assessment of the teaching and learning outcomes. Teacher-made tests are mostly the instrument that is used in evaluating or assessing all classroom learning. You don't just teach for the sake of teaching. As you teach, you need to assess to find out whether indeed you are getting closer or you are achieving your instructional objectives. Without assessment, there is no way you'll be able to assess your work as a teacher or the learning abilities of your students. So performance assessment is indeed very, very necessary. The next factor is the materials available for your instruction. You would agree with me that it will be very, very difficult for your pupils or your learners to really understand a particular lesson without the use of materials. And so sometimes I wonder why some teachers say that they are not getting materials to handle a particular topic. What is the essence of improvisation? You need to improvise to get the needed resources for your lessons. It even aids you, the teacher, in your lesson delivery. It cuts down the number of words you need to use in class. We'll be looking at instructional materials into detail in the subsequent lessons. Now, in the instructional process, materials must be available for learners to use. And the teacher would need to consider the kind of materials to involve in teaching and where to get these materials from. The next factor every good teacher needs to consider in planning instruction is the motivational level of your learners. This may be related to their socioeconomic background. Some pupils, for example, pupils whose parents are a bit educated, are more motivated to study harder than their counterparts whose parents might not be educated. It doesn't mean that children who belong to parents who are not very well educated are not motivated to learn. No. By looking at the percentages, you realize that pupils who are from homes that a lot of people there are educated, they have access to all the resources they need, are motivated to learn. Now, the learning environment, another major factor you need to consider. Resources available, the time of the day, the temperature, number on roll, social conditions of the school, furniture, physical facilities such as buildings, etc., need to be considered. For example, if you have a school or a classroom, the students do not have tables and chairs to sit on, how then do you expect them to sit comfortably, to draw, to circle, or to even listen to whatever you are teaching? Special need cases in the class is another most important factor one needs to consider. As a good teacher, you must look at various special need cases in the class by considering the type of exceptionality these individuals may have, especially if it is a mainstream or inclusion type of education you are giving. You need to plan on the necessary arrangements, strategies that you can use to help these individuals to experience a form of normalization sort of in the classroom. Even if they can't be at par with their mates or their colleagues, at least they can also benefit from the teaching and learning process. The world this time is advocating for inclusion more than segregation. And you being a general classroom teacher, we expect that you need to consider all these special need cases and then make provisions for these students. On this note, we bring today's lesson to a close. We have looked at a lot of concepts today, starting with teaching. We looked at instruction. We're able to look at the distinction between the two. We've talked a lot about facilitative relationship, the various characteristics that shows facilitative relationship between a teacher and the student. I believe and hope that my ladies would go over every information given, will comment, and then subscribe to this channel and tell others about it to do the same. Please, in this era of COVID-19, observe all protocols given by the Ministry of Health. Wash your hands regularly under running water. Use sanitizers as often as possible. Use the mask if you should go out. And please, if possible, stay home. Don't be roaming about unnecessarily, so you don't bring COVID-19 to campus. God bless us all and bless our homeland. Thank you.